How to Make America Utopia, Take Away the Economy from Those Who Rigged It. As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom. It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors, and other books written by Egberto Willis.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. My name is Egberto Willis, your host. Good morning, Houston. Good morning, Harris County. Good morning to the great state of Texas. Good morning to the entire United States. Good morning to the entire world. Look, folks, receiving our signal since with the magic of El Internet, formerly known as ARPANET, created by whom? Created by you, created by we, the people of the United States, created by many of the people of the world, now controlled preeminently by the billionaire class. But you know what, folks? We are going to do something about that. We will do something about that. Anyway, folks, without further ado, let's get to the studio where our resident geniuses reside with El Senor Howard Reynolds, Jacques Van Bebbe, and Matt. Come on in, my brothers.
Good morning, Egberto. How are you?
I am doing fine, sir. How are you doing this morning?
I'm good. How are you, Matt?
I'm making it. Trying to make it.
Hey, at least you're making it, man. As Jack would say, at least you're on the right side of the soil.
Dirt.
Dirt.
Right
Anyway,
side with the daisies.
Right, there you go. Anyway, Jack, your wisdom awaits us.
Well, I think it's Bernie Sanders' wisdom. You know, he is on the right side of history when he says the United States must not be part of Israel's unlawful war on Iran. Only Congress can authorize offensive use of military force. Anything else would be illegal. So I have so much respect for Bernie Sanders. His opinion always reflects care for the people, and he has the ability to stand up to the corporate bullies.
Well, Jack, I think you nailed it as usual. Later on, if we have the time, I do want to make some commentary about Donald Trump and his now interest in no longer being the president that abhors war, but the president who wants war. But, you know, today is Aquino Day and we have a whole lot to cover. And, you know, we have lots of time to continue covering the Iran-Israel conflict. So without further ado, let me pass it to our brother from another mother, El Senor Neil Aquino, who is the founder of the Houston Democracy Project, found at HoustonDemocracyProject.com. HoustonDemocracyProject.com. How you doing, Neil?
Very good. Good morning, audience, local, regional, state, national, global audience. Good morning.
Well, look, it's a pleasure having you here, Neil. There's so much that has happened since the last time we spoke, and specifically the great success of the No Kings protest. I played a bit of what we did here in Kingwood. This red little town of Kingwood, where we got more than 10 times the amount of people we actually expected to see at the event. And I know you attended your own, and you know about what's going on not only here in Houston but around the entire country. What say you?
Well, actually, let me take it back to the so Kingwood. My understanding from Cindy Hendrickson, the crowd was 660.
The minimums between 660 and 700 from the police.
Well, 660 is Willie Mays' home run total. We'll go with that. 660, and then so there were great events because this is connected to the national. So there were great events in Kingwood, Conroe, Huntsville, Lee City, Jersey Village, Sugar Land, and all of this was organized by local folks, local volunteers. In Katy, their crowd estimate was 1,798. That was organized by a precinct chair in Katy. Lee City had 1,000. That's a very conservative. We talked about Lee City a little bit last week. Looked like they had 7 white men as their city council. Please run for city council if you live in Leaf City or part of our audience. And these local protests were, in many respects, the main act. They were all over. There were the protests in cities. They got the attention, but they were. I listened to the recap call. They called it for No Kings, and that's some of the substance of what we're going to talk about today. They talked about 2,100 something events. Those were organized by rank and file people. There were no getting past the horse hockey that everyone's paid, and we don't have to answer that garbage really. These were volunteers. These were volunteers, and they got big crowds in all sorts of places, both Democratic and Republican, and it really spoke to the strength of the opposition and the strength of our movement forward that these crowds occurred.
Before you continue, I want to give us a great salute to Joanne from Los Angeles, California, Paul Fleming from Powder Springs, Georgia, Lisa Blair from Atlanta, Georgia. We also have in the house Harry Denson from Missouri City, Texas. We also have in the on screen Steve Quick, Margaret Dunn Ayer from Substack. We missed the first batch in Substack, but welcome aboard to Politics Done Right, my brothers and sisters. Neil, continue, Neil, because there's some issues with what follows. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Right. So there was and this is a blog post, HoustonDemocracyProject.com, and this was my blog post on the 17th. So on the night of the 16th, there was a 1-hour Zoom call held by some of the National Coalition members for No Kings. And there were groups like Indivisible, the ACLU, Common Cause, a bunch of unions, Black Voters Matter, and they were telling us, right, I choose those words, they were telling us when the next protest was. They were telling us. So they're saying the next protest is on Thursday, July 17th. Thursday, right? Please hear me, Thursday. They're saying they're calling it a good trouble protest, and happy Juneteenth to everybody. They're calling it a good trouble protest, evoking the name of John Lewis, rest his soul. They said his family was on board. Sure it is. But look, the crowd estimates are anywhere from 5 to 10 million. They're calling it one of the largest protests in the United States. We've heard that 3.5% number. If you can get 3.5% of the people mobilized, whether that number is true, relevant today, I don't know. Maybe, hopefully. But then they're sitting on it. They're telling us the next event is a Thursday. And rather than building, the previous protests, I think were April 5th, I think it was. There were then President's Day protests in February. There were Inauguration Day. Everything gets bigger. And rather than building on that momentum or calling for an economic boycott, a labor action, nope. They're telling us to come out on a Thursday. And as you and I were talking about, and I had I'll mention two things. You and I were talking about the Obama campaign. You mentioned Obama for America and all the millions of people across demographics, across ages, right, that they had rallied in 2008.
Including across parties. I'll let you finish. Go ahead. Yeah.
They had a whole crew. So that was demobilized for 2010, and those of us who, the 2010 election, you remember how devastating it was. Many of the redistricting fights that we lose still today stem from 2010. Remember how devastating 2010 was?
Yes. 60-something House. Yeah.
We're still paying for it. It really caused, and then I recall a series of stories in 2020, after Biden had won, and before January 6th, there were stories in the New York Times and other places about a coalition of unions and the traditional advocacy groups that were trying to manage people's reaction if Donald Trump challenged the election. And they wanted to tamp down protests. They were afraid of street protests. And I was part of a local group. It was a broad coalition that had a protest in Eleanor Tinsley Park along Buffalo Bayou and Allen Parkway. Had a really good crowd calling on Trump to accept the election results. A number of groups, but I remember Labor, the AFL-CIO locally, they were seeing if they wanted to be involved, and they kind of ghosted us. I've always remembered this. They didn't take part in the rally, they ghosted it. And Labor was part of this coalition, and they are afraid. They are afraid. I don't have another word for it. Not Labor specifically, but all these groups, and I'm connecting it to what we're talking about Thursday as the next protest, July 17th. Skipping over the July 4th weekend. The 4th is a 3-day holiday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday this year. They're afraid that people will organize autonomously. They're afraid that leaders will come up whom aren't in their orbit. They are afraid of martial law. That's a reasonable concern, but we saw with the Marines in Los Angeles, and I saw another story yesterday in Axios that the Marines are offering assistance to ICE raids. They're not necessarily scooping people up, but that raid, for example, if people saw in Santa Fe Springs, California, where they raided a swap meet, speaking to anyone who was Latino looking, to their view, the Marines were in assistance. Okay, they're saying, the Marines aren't rounding people up. But the upshot of that is Trump's going to do, and Stephen Miller, and they're all going to do what they want to do. They're all going to do what they want to do. The argument is that black people will suffer disproportionately from martial law or from some sort of clampdown. That may be true, but they're going to do it. The Trump people are going to do it anyway. It's clear. And they didn't need any pretense to send in the Marines. They took a little small corner of Los Angeles, 4 blocks out of that giant old region, and turned it into that. So the upshot here is, it seems that, and I'll also say about that call, that 1-hour call on June 16th, they didn't praise, they said thank you to people for organizing it, but Congresswoman Jayapal of Seattle was on the call. She's a progressive leader, I guess. She didn't thank the volunteers. I was very conscious of that. She asked you to volunteer to organize the next one. So you take the time, you take the burden, you bear the costs, you take the risks of dealing with the right wingers. And there were some Patriot Front people who did come to Kingwood. We can talk about that. But who do they think are organizing these things? These things were organized, including in downtown Houston, by volunteers. So I'll let you have a comment there, Egberto. But they're concerned about the size of the crowd. They don't want our own leadership to develop, and they're afraid of their shadow, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, Neil. First of all, here in Kingwood, I did a full report on Kingwood. I did a full video speaking to dozens of Kingwood residents, both Democrat, Republican, Independent. They were ecstatic. There is fire for change, and this isn't manufactured. The 3.5% that you spoke about is in every kind of protest manifesto. That whenever you have 3.5% of the population activated, which we definitely had at least 3.5% of the population activated last Saturday, that change comes, or it is possible to have change. Now, the thing about it is the change that Americans want. The change that Americans want look like the change that you and I have been supporting for decades now, the progressive change. And believe it or not, there are various people within the purported progressive movement, specifically the Democratic movement, that don't want these types of changes, the Medicare for all changes, the support of family leave changes, the making sure that Social Security is fully funded by removing the cap from Social Security, by doing item after item that most people believe is fair. there are many neoliberal Democrats that scoff at that, and they will try to tamp down what is occurring right now, and that is something that the what I love about this, what occurred with no kings, is that it was in fact a a a movement led by volunteers, many of them who had never arranged something
It
like
sure
that.
was.
I
Yes.
use I use Cindy Hendrickson here in Kingwood as my
Yep.
template. She, while she was putting all of this together, she questioned herself because, again, she never did something like this. And from the person who had never done something like this, she created the largest protest, peaceful protest event
Hmm.
in Kingwood, and the largest event of this type ever effectuated in Kingwood. And this was replicated all over. Jack went out to League City, and Jack saw what League City looked like,
Oh, okay.
a
Okay.
relatively conservative area. Howard was at 1960 and 290. I've got Howard's video and pictures, and you could see an activated people. And just like what occurred with OFA back in the 2008 election, OFA was the largest mass movement of Americans put together in this country. OFA was. I went to many OFA events in Kingwood held by Republican households with people who Obama activated their children in colleges and universities around Texas. They went home to their parents and spoke about this guy who really had things for America. Went over there, and I, again, like I said, I went to, I remember coming home to my wife and said, I'm scared about this. Look at who's actually supporting this guy.
Hmm.
And I knew the backlash would have come. I knew the backlash would have come. But that said, OFA was so powerful that they disbanded it.
Yep.
Obama and his crew, I don't know, Obama was probably, they were probably scared of what a true multi-dimensional, multi-party, multi-racial movement would actually occur. We would really have gotten change, Neil.
I have said, we may not have time. Today, but one thing I have long felt is one thing that our Democratic Party establishment is deeply concerned about is an actual multiracial autonomous movement. An
Yes.
actual they are, I say this all the time, and they are afraid of autonomy. So they're afraid of progressiveness, but even for people, let's say that Congresswoman Jayapal really does want Medicare for all and progressive causes. They want to do it. They don't want us to do it. They are they are concerned about movements that are led by actual folks, and they will. If you are dumb enough like me to look on Twitter, look on TikTok, you will see these videos that are meant to divide people. They will come up. You'll get in the algorithm, and you'll be looped in. You'll go to the creator, they call them, who made them. They'll have 60,000 followers, 20, and you'll be like, man, someone's paying you or someone's telling you to influence in this way. And another thing I want to talk about, um, Kingwood has two city council members to take this back to a local angle. Two city council members, Houston, live in Kingwood. The district council member, Fred Flickinger, and the at-large councilwoman, Twyla Carter, who is someone we should defeat in 2027. And they both spoke at City Council. Councilwoman Carter, last week on June 11th, said that she'd been getting calls to her office of people all afraid, and she said on June 11th, "Don't avoid these protests. Avoid these protests." Um, Council member Flickinger yesterday at council, or 2 days ago at council, talked about how he had been getting phone calls. Oh, whoa, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? They knew about the Kingwood event. They knew about the downtown event. And these folks live in such a bubble. anyone who's been to one of these protests in Kingwood, League City, knows that these are really some of the most law-abiding people possible. These are people who use turn signals, return their library books, pay their taxes. Okay, the idea that these folks are going to be disruptive, and the idea that you can support folks who are disappearing people through ICE, brutal cuts to Medicaid, Medicare, the idea that people who support the brutality that we're seeing, and they really think that we're the threat, that we're the danger, and they're getting phone calls from their constituents, and they just are living in another world.
The leaders, Twyla and Flickinger, they're not living in a bubble. They are creating the bubble. They need to create the bubble to stop change. So let me say one thing that's interesting, Neil, and I want to protect identity. So this is an anecdotal story, but it's a friend of mine here in Kingwood. Husband has turned into not only MAGA, but what's the other movement? There's the QAnon, MAGA and QAnon.
Oh, okay.
Okay, she has become. She decided to go to the Kingwood March, and she was there. And it's funny because as I'm going down the line interviewing people, I see her, and I was in shock. I didn't want to mention or openly say like, "What are you doing here?" because it was so shocking for me to see her there. I played it off, move on, and question. But later that afternoon, she stopped by after having a slight argument with her husband because she sat there watching Fox News talk about all these terrorists in the streets, these rioters in the streets. And, she had just come from what she thought was a very empowering event. She came back another ideology. She came back empowered, and she wanted me to know how empowered she felt after going to the event. But
Sure, yeah.
her husband, who was watching Fox News, told her, you're a traitor. Actually, look. I mean, this everybody's calling what these guys are doing traitors because they're violent, they're. So two different realities. One that he got not being at the event from Fox News, and she was actually at the event, leaving the event empowered. You're absolutely correct. These politicians, and by the way, let me tell you what calls Cindy Hendrickson, who formed the Kingwood Area Democrat, and others were getting. The calls they were getting were people threatening us going out there to see the event. That's the kind of calls. And in fact, the only amount, Patriot Front, the police officers came out there. And the Kingwood event occupied all 8 lanes. In other words, every corner. Again, it's a lot of people that came out. And they tried to vacate a spot on one of the corners because Patriot Front wanted to have their say as well. There were about five to seven Patriot Front people that came out. They were, I don't even want to say they were ran off because they weren't ran off. They were just so outnumbered that that they simply looked silly out there with their racist, xenophobic messaging that they were trying to put out there. But I tell you, Neil, let's go ahead and get Richard on the call.
And before we get
go ahead. Go ahead.
To our audience, that since we do have a global audience, Kingwood is a neighborhood of Houston. Kingwood is a more conservative part, but it is in the city of Houston. But Houston is so large, it's 45 minutes for me without traffic. But that's what we're referencing for folks out of town.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Thank you for doing that, Neil. And let me tell you, while we had ceded conservatism to Kingwood, I am no longer ceding that to Kingwood. One person came up to me and said, "Wait a minute, or humble. Where are all these people from?" And what I did is I kept on asking, "Are you from Kingwood? Are you?" to make sure that these were Kingwood people. They're like, "Oh, I've lived here for 25 years. Oh, I've lived here for 15 years." Look, the problem is when you have a boisterous folk, the silent majority many a times remain just that, silent. Thank you for that, Neil. Let's go to Richard, line 1.
Yeah, thank you, Egberto. Thank you for what you do, and Neil, and all y'all that are on the left side.
Well, thank you. You helped
side.
organize in Conroe and Huntsville, and you're just what we're talking about, citizen organizers.
Yeah.
Thank you, Richard.
Yeah. And well, I wish I would have joined y'all up, 7 or 8 years ago instead of being on the sidelines. But I didn't really get serious until like 3 weeks before the election when I realized, how can it be this cotton picking close? So that's when I got serious. I wish I'd have been this serious all along. But anyway,
that's okay. What do you got this morning?
The time is now. This is what's at stake: is your country, your freedom, your democracy, and it's on the line. This is what's at stake. Resist, resist, resist. If your kids live in your house, are voting age, and they're MAGA, kick them out of the house. If your parents are still MAGA, disown them until they come back to reality. If your friends are still, and that's the key word here, still, after 10 years of this buffoon showing you who he is, under no uncertain terms, if they're still MAGA, tell them, I don't want anything to do with you. When you come back to reality, get a hold of me. Now, having said that, there is something else below that. You have people that are supposed to be on our side that have no guts. Texas Women's University is fixed Monday coming to my house and going to interview about my aunt, who was instrumental in getting the 19th Amendment passed, Minnie Fisher Cunningham, who I remember really well. I was 9 when she passed away. Sam Houston State University, I thought wanted to be a part of it. I called him and talked to him. Oh, yeah. Crickets. Ghost me. Nothing. Jeremy Wallace with the Houston Chronicle. Now, I don't know if he's just so busy that he won't call me or text me or email me, but I've tried to get a hold of him. And he's supposed to be a promoter of my aunt, Minnie Fisher Cunningham. Crickets. Now, I don't know what's going on here, if people can't just get organized or if they just don't have enough guts. But if you're going to be on the left side, the correct side, then you got to do it 100%. If you're going to resist. Either do it or go back to – this is not socializing. I've gotten into it with all these people here in Montgomery County and Walker County that want to go protesting and then put the signs in the trunk and then go to these restaurants that are owned and operated by MAGAs. And I try to tell them, look, either you protest or you don't protest. And I get in a jam over this because I'm 100% in 100% of the time. So go ahead, Egberto. What do you think about all I just said?
Look, let me tell you, I am not going to argue what you said, brother. Your work speaks volumes to what you have been doing for the movement. So, brother, I'm not going to have anything to say. You're absolutely correct. Okay. Now, as you know, I take a little bit more conciliatory stance, but I have your back 100%, brother Neil. Come on in.
Right. I'll just say I'm over it with worrying about recognition from establishment entities. I will get frustrated sometimes over who gets a little coverage, or who gets recognized. I'll get a little frustrated, but I'm really over it, and that connects to what we just said to begin the show. These folks in these established networks, and the Chronicle does a lot of good reporting. The Chronicle does a lot of good reporting, and I don't want to trash media sources that are helping in some ways, but they're part of these networks that have helped bring the authoritarianism. Sometimes they just don't have the imagination, frankly, to envision something different, or they're invested in, they came up through these systems and they just don't grasp that something can be different. And that's exactly why they don't want, it sounds conspiratorial, excuse me, but that's exactly why Obama for America gets folded. And they scheduled the next rally for a Thursday.
Exactly.
That's exactly why.
I want to bring up something to Richard. Richard, and help me out here. Tell me about your aunt again. What is it? What is it? What university is doing something about her again?
Texas Women's University in Denton.
And tell me about your aunt. There's a reason I'm asking.
Minnie Fisher Cunningham. She was instrumental in getting the 19th Amendment passed. She was the first woman to ever run for United States Senate from Texas. She was part of FDR's administration. She was president of women's suffrage in the state of Texas, and she was secretary of women's suffrage nationally.
Thank you
And
for
she
that information. Thank you for that info. Let me ask you the other question. And what is it that the Baptist University, what university? Sorry, sorry. What university again?
TWU, Texas Woman's University.
Texas. And you said they were interviewing you, and you were trying to get other entities involved. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would think there's supposedly a resolution in Austin trying to give her credit where credit's due, which is way overdue. Now, granted, there is a historical marker about a half a mile from my house all about her. But I mean, that with people that have a lot less to do with democracy getting a lot more credit than her, it's about time she finally gets credit. Now, my point is, I asked TWU if they would mind if SHSU, Sam Houston State University in Huntsville, if they want to get involved with this interview and discuss. And they said, no problem, great. And so I got a hold of SHSU, the history department, where I have my degree. Some of the professors are still there that I still converse with and communicate with occasionally. Oh, yeah, great, sure, yeah, we'd love to. Since then, they won't even answer my call. They won't text me. They won't email. Lie to me. I'm easy. Don't just leave me hanging on a dang limb. But, what am I supposed to think?
Well,
it's
it's DEI all over again. I'd like to ask you to do me a favor, my brother, and that is drop me a line at kpft@politicsandright.com. I would like to do a little research and write up something myself because, especially in these times, you're absolutely right. Thank you, brother. Anything else, Richard, before I jump to Johnny?
Let me end with this. Eleanor Roosevelt credits my aunt as the person who got her involved in politics. Now, if you know something about the history of Eleanor Roosevelt, you'd realize how significant that is because her uncle
I do know that. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So when she gives credit to my aunt, that's saying something. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. All right, Johnny, come on in, brother.
I thank Richard for his call. That was very inspirational. Thank you, Richard, what you just did. Thank you for your story.
You learn something every day, brother. You learn something every day. Go ahead, brother.
We have such wonderful callers, and we have one or two fellow time travelers from the other side of the aisle that are very frustrating, but I'll get to that in just a moment. Here's a challenge. I say strike while the iron's hot, Egberto. Why don't you, in one of your coffees to one of your Kingwood residents, go to neighbors, say, hey, how about we rename Kingwood Balsa Wood or Pine Salt?
Oh, man. I would expect that out of you, Johnny. Anyway, finish up for me, Johnny.
Yes. And to finish up, this is for Brian or Brain and his buddy, Breitbart. You know that movie with Tom Hanks where he's everywhere? He's the ubiquitous what's his name? Forrest Gump. Remember that?
Yeah.
Forrest Gump's here, Forrest Gump's there. He's everywhere historically in all these footages and JFK and John Lennon. How about we make a spoof reel of Breitbart and Brain? They show up in the hallway where the New York City comptroller is being manhandled and illegally, unconstitutionally arrested. And they would say, hey, wait a minute, hold on, Ice, hold on. Mr. Comptroller, do you agree, yes or no, that Joe Biden's son should sell expensive paintings? That's their priorities. You guys will talk about disconnection from reality. That is what we're dealing with some of these guys. They call in and they say, how's your fundraising going? Oh, good. And then, like George Carlin says, Civil War, pardon me, that's what it's like when they call, when I listen to them guys talking to you. It's like they're totally disconnected. They don't listen to what you're saying. It goes in one ear, out the other. It's like my neighbor. She goes, that.
Let me just tell you one thing, Johnny. Johnny, you know something?
Rename Kingwood.
Johnny, here's the deal. I want to say something, and I want it to be taken right. Yesterday, I was on a call. It wasn't a call. It was an interview with a radio station in Detroit. and ITV or some, it's a network of online guys all over the country. And we were talking about immigration, and one of the issues was whether black people should be even bothered with immigration, etc. And we went through a whole lot of stuff, right? And in effect, this particular guy was like, to hell with it. These immigrants don't care about us anyway. They were pushing the same false narrative that Fox News do to create dissension between different groups. And what I did, yeah, can you hear me? Yeah. What I did.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. That's a divide and conquer strategy.
Right. And what I did is I gave the genesis of why so many people try to get to this country, both US policy, etc. And I went through in detail, and one of the listeners was like, "Oh, I didn't know that. Wow, I see what you're saying." And they were immediately ready to say, that's given that scenario, I must support my immigrant brothers and sisters because what happened under why you saw a lot of let's say black men vote in the election, and it wasn't a lot, but a substantial move anyway, was because dissension between, they used the immigrant issue as a wedge issue. Hey, they're coming to take your jobs. You hear Donald Trump talk about black jobs, like if some job is black. I always laugh when I heard that, right? But they created that narrative that actually worked a bit, not a lot, but it worked sufficient to add to his base. And after I spoke to that group, most, I would say, were like, wow, I see that. But there was this one guy who was like, I know what I saw when I went to LA. When I went to LA, I saw the immigrant community displacing the black community. And all these things he's saying. And I'm like, look, there are more there. I mean, black people are 12% of the population, right? Anytime you start to get an influx of anybody else, it's gonna infiltrate. Don't look at it as the guy who says the country is becoming too brown, or the country is become. Look at it as an opportunity to create alliances, and the others saw it, but this guy was stuck in his way. This guy would be considered sort of on the left. Well, I don't even want to call it the left side, but it just shows you
they use that term foundational American.
Yes, you know exactly what I'm talking about, Neil.
I'm telling you that
you are a smart brother, Neil. Okay, you get it.
Stuff is that stuff is coming from somewhere. I'm not saying there aren't legitimate feelings, but it's coming from Minsk or Moscow as much as it's coming from Atlanta or Detroit.
Thank you. But we're just filled up with calls. So Johnny, let me let you go, Johnny. I love you. We'll talk another time, Johnny. I want to bring a woman into the conversation. Amy, line 6.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Hello.
Good morning, Amy. How are you doing this morning, sister?
I'm doing well, thank you. So I just wanted to make a comment as far as one of the guys had mentioned that the left side is the right side, or the right side to be on. And I'm not in disagreement in the sense that I definitely think that Trump is trying to be a king of this country, and it's, hurting our country detrimentally. However, I just have to wonder how many of the people who attended this No Kings protest during COVID were the same ones calling for a lockdown and were mad at Trump for not being more pushy with the vaccine. Because technically, if you think about that, all the people who were pushing and they were, calling people who didn't take the vaccine, basically terrorists, like, oh, you're killing people by not doing this, but wanted Trump to enforce that. That's basically elevating Trump as a king, and they wanted him to push that on people, right? So I feel like it would be nice to have taken like a poll and asked people who attended this rally, whatever you want to call it, if they were in favor of that during COVID, because
Let me
it's not where they're complete hypocrites.
Mhm. I hear you, and let me just go with gradation here. And Amy, I really understand what you're saying with respect to how many of those. Let me just tell you, I went to several of the protests as well during COVID. I was always masked up for these protests during COVID, and if you recall, you can still go ahead and find a lot of videos on TV with the protests that was occurring, and a lot of these people that were doing the protests then were masked up.
And so a
Some
lot of this
were
was George Floyd at the time.
George Floyd, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of folks were masked up even while they were outside. And do remember that the reasons during that time that restaurants were opening with sort of outside environments is because according to the science at the time, the known science at the time, being outside was safer. Being outside was safer than being inside with crowds. Being outside was different. So there was not a large hypocritical thing there. Now, with regards to vaccination, and based on how you were speaking, it sounded to me that you didn't necessarily want to be forced to have a vaccine. Am I correct?
Correct, and I feel
And
like
that's fine. Yeah, no, and that's fine.
nobody
That's
should
fine.
be forced to
Wait,
do anything. Yeah.
let me finish. Let me cut some bread
Yeah.
with
Go
you
ahead.
here.
Go ahead.
And here's the thing, Amy. I think you have the right not to have a vaccine, right? But I think as a society, we also have the right to say, if you're not going to have the vaccine, and science have proven that the vaccine does make it less lethal, that we should in fact pass laws that, maybe we don't want those who don't have vaccines in certain places. It's a health issue. It's not an issue of trying to control you. It's an issue of trying to giving people a larger possibility of remaining alive. Can you understand it when it described that way?
No, because now the science has proven to be different, and anyone who spoke out against it, they were considered, oh, you're one of those quack jobs, right? But now we're seeing left and right that people still died even after taking the vaccine.
Let me just, Amy, I gotta stop you there. Amy, let me just tell you.
Because it doesn't go with your narrative.
No,
And just so you know, I'm
no,
against
Amy,
Trump.
honest. The reason I'm stopping you there is the following, right? There is information out there that is trying to make that statement a reality, and I can't blame you from where you're getting your information. There is no reputable science data out there that denies that masking does reduce the transmissibility, as well as vaccines do reduce the severity. Those are verifiable and quantifiable things that are out there. I just want to say that, not in an argument fashion. I just want to let you know those are statements of fact. If you take a look, if you do a distribution, science matters. If you do a distribution of who died, the people that died are the people that were least likely to follow even the earliest rules that were created to prevent the transmission of the disease. Again, these are just numbers that you don't have to listen to me about. It is important that you do find out those numbers objectively. It's important, Amy. You're a smart woman. I hear that in the way you address issues. So what I'm saying is, before we parrot some of these other things, please, I ask you respectfully, go ahead and look for this data, okay?
Wait, one more thing. Let me leave
Yes,
it on
ma'am.
this thing.
Yes, go ahead.
You're telling me to look for data. You're telling me to follow the science, correct? Okay. I've done extensive research on the vaccine. You know how? I went to the Moderna and Pfizer website themselves, right in the very beginning. I read through about 300 pages worth of information. And let me just let you know I have a science background. Okay? I'm in the health field. This vaccine, first of all, it's not a vaccine. It's an mRNA technology. Okay?
I understand all of that, ma'am. Look, let me say this, Amy, because Amy, no, Amy, it's not that, because I've heard the argument before.
Disagree that Trump is is trying to be a king. We'll agree there. But I
Yes.
still think the left is just as hypocritical as the right.
And
And
that's fine.
that's
Look, I
that
agree with you
perhaps
that
who
you
I
can. I agree with you on Trump, and with respect to the other thing, I would let me tell you, because it seems to me like you really do research on my 3 o'clock program. I would be more than happy for you to present that and for me to show you where, in effect, with those results that you're coming out. And I say this respectfully, but you're absolutely wrong, my friend. But we'll talk about, if you're willing to call my 3 o'clock show where I have more time. I'm willing to discuss it. But thank you, Amy, and you always have a place here to talk, sister. All right?
all right. Take care. Bye bye.
Take care. All right, let's go to Jimmy. Come on in, Jimmy.
Today is Emancipation Day. It was made a national holiday under the Biden administration. President Biden is coming to Galveston to celebrate that day when 250,000 slaves were freed in Texas. It's a very important national holiday, and it came about 2 years after Lincoln issued his Emancipation Proclamation. Because we didn't have radio or TV back then, I had to come to Galveston, and it took, I think, almost 2 years to get the word out. So today, everybody should celebrate Emancipation Day, a national holiday. One more thing, President Trump is thinking about whether or not to go to war against Iran. I hope he does not do that. We need to follow the words of Gandhi and have peaceful demonstrations, and you stop having wars that kill thousands of people. President Trump should not go to war against Iran.
Thank you so kindly, Jimmy, for bringing that up. You know, Jimmy is one of our warriors at the Houston Peace and Justice Center. And Jimmy, every time you excel. Thank you, my brother.
Thank you, Everett. Celebrate the day. Bye-bye.
Absolutely. You have a wonderful day. Let's go to Cocoa. Come on in, Cocoa, line number 6.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning, Cocoa. How are you doing? Did I say the name right? Forgive me if I haven't.
It's okay. Coco is fine.
Oh, Coco. All right. Come on in, Coco. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Hey, I was tuned in and I heard part of the conversation about, I think you said you were on the call with other people, and a guy was making comments about
Immigrants
in California. And so I just wanted to make a comment about that, but also something about the vaccine before I forget.
Okay, go ahead, ma'am. The floor is yours.
About that particular comment, I know that there's a lot of conversation about a lot of Black people not participating as much as people would like in these No Kings marches and other marches against what the current administration, the terrors that they are carrying out against the population. So I just hope part of the conversation includes the fact that even though a lot of media erroneously tried to report as if Black men were not voting Democrat, including some high-profile Democrats were trying to act as though the Black men were not on board, that was false, as usual, because Black voters, we always vote overwhelmingly for the Democratic candidate, even though we get very little in return for our votes. But in this past election, 92% of Black women, and I think the number was 88% of Black men, now that's lower than what it normally is, voted for the Democratic candidate, although there were disagreements with some of the things that particular candidate stood for. We still overwhelmingly voted for that candidate. And so I know that a lot of my people, I'm a Black woman, a lot of us who don't participate in the marches, a lot of them feel like we did our part at the ballot box. And when you look at the numbers for everyone else who's voting, the numbers for a lot of Hispanic voters, a lot of white voters, Asian voters, everyone else who voted, if you look at those numbers, I think I saw the chart from the New York Times, it was really surprising to me how low the numbers were for people in other demographics who voted for the Democratic candidate, knowing full well Donald Trump showed what he was going to do. He told us what he was going to do. He said he was going to do exactly what he's doing. All the terrible things that this administration is carrying out. And a lot of people, I see so many people on the news talking about, oh, we supported him and now he's turning on us. Well, honestly, those demographics, I'm like, no, he told you this is what he was going to do. But yet you still chose to vote for him. So that's how a lot of black people feel who are not participating in these marches. A lot of the black people that I know, I'm just going to say that because we are very, we're not monolithic, not by a long shot, no matter what other people try to assume about us. But also, you know, and I just want to say, too, our ancestors did a lot. We're celebrating Juneteenth today. My family and I are actually on the way to Galveston. We just got to Galveston because we always commemorate this day by visiting the historical marker that's here. And during the after emancipation, the 14th Amendment that allows for birthright citizenship, that was put in place because the people who enacted that did not want the black people who were formerly enslaved, have been enslaved for centuries, to just be able to just be put out of the country because our ancestors were not considered citizens. And then even the Civil Rights Act that was passed after all the marches that are going on, even since 2020, I call it protest summer. I was like, this is awesome, but let's just see what comes after this. And we would like to see legislation that's passed as a result. The marches are awesome, but if we're not getting any legislation passed, I don't understand the point of it. We have to get the votes. The people have to vote for the people who we know are going to vote in favor of humane treatment of our fellow citizens and not all the inhumanity that we're seeing. Don't just vote for someone and then be surprised that they do exactly what they said they were going to do.
Thank you, Coco. I mean, let me just tell you that we did have a woman on the call who took your exact position. And I looked at her and I said, I cannot argue with your position. I will remain engaged as I'm an immigrant. I'm a black man. I'm a Latino man. I carry all those demographics. And I said, I will stay engaged and I respect those who feel we continue to do our job.
I agree. Exactly. I'm with you. I agree. We should be engaged, but we shouldn't be subjected to criticism.
No, none at all. I got you.
At the voting ballot box.
Hey, sis, I gotta go. Sis.
But with the vaccine, I don't understand people who try to say, well, of course, hindsight is 2020. So yes, we have more data now, so we know some things that we didn't know back in 2020. So I don't like when people are critical of those decisions because people were making decisions on the fly, you know, like we didn't have the information. But anyway,
and look, thank you, sis. Thank you, Coco. All right, Joni, I'm gonna have to limit to 30 seconds because I completely mismanaged the phones. But I think what Coco said had to be said. Come on in, Joni, 30 seconds.
Absolutely. I'm just following up with that. She made a good point, and as well as and happy Juneteenth.
Juneteenth.
I think that the black people should relax as much as possible, and certainly not put their bodies in harm's way at this point. They built this country pretty much. So I just wanted to say, you know, there's no judgment at all from my husband and I. We just had that conversation. I said I'm glad that people aren't putting their bodies in harm's way because they've done plenty.
Thank you, Joni.
Thank you.
Love you, sis. Gotta go. Let's go, Patrick. 30 seconds, and Patrick, we'll have to finish up at 3:00. But come on, Patrick. 30 seconds.
Yeah, I had a whole lot, but I'll just focus on Amy. My memory is different. I don't ever remember forced vaccinations being discussed. I remember forced masking to be discussed, and it was shot down. And it was for the betterment of everybody. She could apply that same logic to seatbelts. She could apply that same logic to the labeling we put on cigarettes. She can apply that same logic to a whole lot of things that we do to keep each other safe, like stopping at stoplights and stop signs. So we're forced to do all of that.
Thank you, Patrick. Got to go. See you at 3, Patrick. Bruce, 30. Go real quick. Oh, okay. Bruce, come on in, Bruce. 30 seconds.
Good morning.
Bruce, You're on, Bruce. 30 seconds.
Yeah, the last caller said something I was going to call about. I remember all the arguments against seatbelts. I had an old man tell me I want to be thrown 3 from the car because I don't want to burn to death. The data shows it saves lives. The other thing is, thank you, Richard, and thank you, Johnny. Great calls. And the other thing is watching Ted Cruz and Tucker fight. It's like watching 2 ex-wives fight. You can't pull for either one of them, but you love to see them fight.
Thank you.
I only got a few seconds. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Bruce. Tag, 30 seconds. Let's see.
Oh, here you go. Hey, I wanted to congratulate you on pushing people to keep those lines of communication open with Amaga. Your one caller said he wouldn't go to Amaga restaurant. It's too bad because we need to keep those lines of communication open, and you really preach that, and I appreciate it. The other thing I wanted to say about mRNA real quick is that it's new technology that's still being developed, and I think it's a great thing. We don't have to go to cowpox anymore to fight chickenpox. We've got
Thank you.
mRNA now that's
Tag, I'm
developing.
at a hard one, Tag. Thank you, my brother. Brian, you got 30 seconds. 30 seconds, Brian.
All right.
Okay, Brian, 30 seconds. They haven't put him up yet. Okay. Neil, give me a closer, Neil.
I want to make the point that the march in Houston was pretty diverse. There was a pretty diverse and a younger crowd. You felt like some tipping point had been reached. It was a mixed crowd, more so than the other by a mile. I think some of the ICE stuff. So I want to make sure that impression is correct. Impression is out there. And
tell me about your
HoustonDemocracyProject.com. HoustonDemocracyProject.com. There's a blog. And the next protest is when you organize it. The First Amendment is your permit.
Thank you so kind. Studio, give me a closer.
Nothing here, Egberto.
All right, thank you, folks. Hey, folks, I kind of mismanaged the phones. Forgive me, but guess what, guys? Love you all. Remember, the rest of the show is at politicsdoneright.com/newsletter, politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. Likewise, you can talk to me directly, email me directly at kpft@politicsdoneright.com, kpft@politicsdoneright.com. My name is Egberto Willis. This is Politics Done Right, and you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out.
Is it live?